السيدات والسادة الضيوف.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, we'd like to welcome you into the second day of the 17th Jazeera Forum. In this session that we will be discussing the digital revolution and the redistribution of global powers. So our panelist will be Ibrahim Saif, the managing partner, and Dr. Sahar Khamis, Associate Professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Maryland, and Dr. Tayyib Ghazi, Senior Economist at the Policy Center for the New South at the Kingdom of Morocco. We'd like to welcome you all. As you may know that the recent wars, especially in Gaza, Ukraine, and Sudan, have revealed the growing importance of modern technologies in changing the nature of these war and to also change the balance of power. So, for example, the drones and cyber capabilities managed to empower non-acting agents and also added a dimension, cross-border dimension to the conflict, modern conflict. The same context, the recontrolling minerals, rare minerals and supply chains related to them kind of redistributed powers and gave countries like China very influential cards in its relations with the world. Also, digital revolutions and also change the discourse, the narratives, of course, and also undermined the official narratives and also empowered the youth movements and protest in many countries. We will explore the impact of digital revolution and the repositioning or redistribution of global power, and with cyber and economic and geopolitical impact and its role in forming new narratives and public opinion. Dr. Sahar, we start with you before talking to politics and economics. We start from the place where things are, the images formed. How is the digital power has represented the narratives in the region? Of course, at the beginning, I would like to express my happiness and gratitude for allowing me to take part in this forum. Of course, this subject is highly important, especially at this timing when we talk about the redistribution of global powers. And this is the theme, one of the themes of this forum. We talk about normally, or ideally, talking about economic, military powers. But there is a big power that is lying within the word, the narratives, and this is not of not less importance than the forms of other powers that have been mentioned. Of course, it is not a secret that until recently, the dominant narrative on Western medias or in Western medias and American media specifically was biased into the Israelis at the expense of the Arab narratives. Of course, we witnessed huge sympathy towards to Israel or to the victims of Israel at the expense of the innocent lives that were lost in Gaza and the Arab world, and of course the bad framing of or representation of Arabs and Muslims and link them to the themes of violence and terrorism, of course, after the events of September 11. And whenever there is a conflict in the Middle East, these stereotypes would emerge again from the media or through the media coverage. So you see words like Muslim or an Arab is associated, unfortunately, with the word terrorism or violence. But in reality, we have to refer to the role of the social media, or what is labeled as the digital revolution, in reforming, reshaping that narrative. And especially We've witnessed that during the war in Gaza recently. We've witnessed many journalists, female and male, and many of them who've lost their lives as martyrs in this war. 256, 10 of them are the journalists in Al Jazeera, and we would like to send our condolences to their families. Those journalists have lost their lives on the line of duty in their attempt to convey the truth and not to submit to the image or the narrative presented by the Western media. Of course, in addition to these journalists, there is the ordinary person or the citizen or citizen journalism. An ordinary person, some of them has joined his role as a journalist and also as a role as an activist, and some of them are just ordinary people, mothers, fathers, and people who are within the society have used the social media to platforms to change, to send, convey a different media. We've noticed many of them try to show different patterns of life in Gaza. Some of them talked about steadfastness and the continuation, and this is a very important form of resistance. Resistance is not only limited to carrying a weapon, but to have a position, to have a stance. And we've witnessed some of the mothers and ladies. They talked about their multiple displacement, forced displacement, and they had to move houses and move their families. Despite everything, they did not forget their role as a citizen in that society and insisting on staying in their land. And this is their persistence or steadfastness. And of course, there is another thing, is the social service, how they try to support each other, to provide medical, social services in order to support each other and support the society as a whole. Of course, there is also the continuation of insisting on life and joy. So despite all these challenges, despite the shelling, despite the bombardment, they insist on living. They still held weddings, events, and they celebrate the birth of children, and they would keep cooking, and despite the harshness of life there. So these images are all over social media platforms and have been watched by millions of people. So this have changed a lot in the stereotype, the traditional stereotype, which was probably characteristics by violence and negativity. So the world is witnessing that there are people, children, mothers, elderly, they are living in harsh conditions. Despite that, they insist on staying in their lands or insist on living. Despite all these conditions, we've witnessed a huge wave of sympathy with Gaza and the people of Gaza. We've witnessed the huge movement in the students in Maryland, for example, university that I've been teaching for many years, and big universities in the United States have witnessed that student movement among the youth, of course. And we've also witnessed big protests and demonstrations, whether it was in Europe and the United States and Australia. All these is signals of the way that the impact that those activists, those citizen journalists created or made during their conveying of what's happening on the ground, and that also the change and the shift also happened in the mindsets of many people around the world.
There is some which is called pushback. Social media outlets with certain algorithms have banned the dealing of certain terminology. How was this used as a tool to change public opinion? This is an important point. Thank you for raising it. If we speak about this movement, we see there is a pushback or the counter war If we mention Facebook, for example, or Twitter, which is called X now, they started to put mechanisms which could downsize the content that is supportive of the Palestinian cause. We have seen witness people who insist on putting some content in support of the Palestinian cause, yet they are banned on Facebook, or their accounts are suspended or even shut down completely. On Twitter or X, which is dominated by Elon Musk right now. So now there is shadow banning, meaning that instead of reaching thousands or millions, now you can only reach a few number of people that wouldn't go beyond 100. This is also another type of downsizing the content in support of the Palestinian cause. So we have to pay attention that those platforms are not neutral. We want to look at this cyberspace as a glimpse of hope and space for hope. But there is another side of this equation, which is it also has domination by countries, business people, such as Elon Musk and his control. And in Facebook, we've seen how some of those giant platforms have certain mechanisms to ban content or downsizing it. So we are facing a big impediment or equation. As Arabs and Muslims, we want to have our own tools to speak about ourselves. And here there is Upscrolled, which is a new platform which was invented by an activist who is Palestinian, who said, we must have our own tools for us Arabs, Muslims, and Palestinians, through which we can speak about ourselves through it without being subjected to this domination by others, whether it is the West or governments or entrepreneurs, etc. So this is a very important step, which I hope to be followed by other important steps. Does it exist till now? Yes. Upscroll, yes. What's the viewership of it?
طيب كويس. دكتور إبراهيم سيف.
Dr. Ibrahim Saif, if the narrative is managed digitally, also economically, so the control of those platforms, how did it change the supply chains in oil and the form of the international power? Thank you for this opportunity to take part in this forum. No doubt, the domination of the narrative has been done, and we have seen the role of governments to some extent that has been neutralized, and we have seen syndicates and unions and youth movements which has established for a popular narrative. So this has contributed to a large extent to contain the wild activities of certain governments to revisit some of their policies, and maybe at the end of the invasion on Gaza we have seen this transformation. Now economically, what's happening? There is an important element which was manifested evidently in Bab el-Mandeb Strait or the Red Sea. If we go to the 17th or 18th century and see how a sea fleet was impeded, then you needed a large amount of ships to block it. But today we have seen that a group of drones, very inexpensive, able to block the crossings or the sea crossings or the sea ways or the straits. Also the logistics and the supply chains and how they have been affected. The features started during COVID to appear, but also we have seen disruption in the supply chains lately, which was interesting to show that the issue of integration and globalization, as we have seen it since the 10 points in Washington, which is liberate the economy and openness, etc. Today, there is a revisiting of this policy, which is deep and led by the US, which itself led those points speaking about globalization and economic openness and marginalization of the role of the governments. So now we're going back to the center again. Today, there is no globalization as it was defined in the past. The United States and some Western countries have discovered their reliance on China. And also, there is the fact that out of 20 of critical metals or precious metals, China controls more than 85% of 17 of them in terms of their production or possessing their mining places. Also, who does the processing or manufacturing, and this is the new microchip war that we are witnessing. Even oil today has taken a late position in those industries, because today the United States is leading this, and it is self-sufficient. It is not relying on what comes to it from outside. It has taken access to Venezuela now, so they have surplus. So those critical minerals used in the development of technologies today, they knew that the main competitor nowadays is the one who is in control of it in terms of production, etc., etc. So we will see a qualitative transformation in managing international relations, and thus there is now a return to internal policies and industrialization policy locally, which started after COVID, and now we're coming back to it. And we shouldn't undermine the fact that what happened in Gaza and the ramifications after that were pushing some countries to revisit the supply chains and production, etc. So today, I think we are witnessing a world economic movement led by the US, which claims, which is paradoxical, that they have lost because of globalization policies, even though we have seen lately how globalization has led to elimination of poverty, and now here we are at a conjunction to see where we are headed.
كيف تنظر إلى موقع تايوان بالنسبة لهذا الملف ورغبتها في أن تحل هذا الملف مرة واحدة؟
لا، الآن الملف خرج من حدود تايوان. الآن الملف حقيقة يعني إنه اليوم الذي يعني يشكو من هذا الملف هي الولايات المتحدة وبعض الدول الأوروبية، هم لا يريدوا الاعتماد على طرف ثالث أيا.
Rely on a third party for them. Even relying on manufacturing in Taiwan is still a shortcoming, and makes them subject to other exterior impacts or factors. The huge financial incentives offered in the United States in order to bring these manufacturings into United States. Much of these industries that we used to believe as advanced, a big chunk of them, the factory of the world, not when it comes to cars only or the traditional material, but also for the micro and advanced material. Samsung, Apple is manufactured in the United States. This is what we know as an ordinary consumers. As for the micro industries, for example, the weapons industry, and also that's what you know what. The United States has a limited ability in engaging more than one war because of the constraints imposed on the raw material that are used to manufacture these items. So what we've been discussing is about the ramifications on the narratives and in practical terms, the manufacturing of these material. There is a limitation of the military power. You can have the technology, but if you don't have the raw material to manufacture, and this limitation is imposed by the reality, and that reality made us reconsider some of the strategic policies, especially in the United States. And what's happening in the United States will be impacted by or followed by many countries. That there is a limit for digital power, and there is also limits. There are limits for military powers, and that's what the recent events have revealed. So, Dr. Tayyib Al-Ghazi, between the narratives and economics, the state will remain the factor that try to control the scene. How are countries using resources in order to enhance and strengthen its influence, political influence? Thank you, Jalal, for this opportunity. I would like to express my gratitude for the invitation that you offered me today and to intervene in this intellectual forum that made sure to follow and to analyze the events and the interventions of the many panelists did an excellent job through tackling different issues that my colleague here talked about digital platforms and how these how new factors basically new factors you know they were only they probably were introduced to the scene to tell their narratives, and probably one of the most important the democratization of the platforms and enabling individuals and groups to engage in wars of narratives. And these new factors are probably one of the symbolic victories when it comes to the Palestinian cause, for example. During the 7th of October events and what followed as well. Please allow me to, when it comes to controlling the narratives and also the
and what we have now in terms of regional economic activities, and we have seen trade wars between China and the United States. Add to that also the conflicts that could come with this new technological revolution, away from the precious minerals, because we should not forget that the technological revolution and AI dictate much energy and require a lot of energy and water in order to control the temperature of the servers. So away from all that, allow me to raise a question that exceeds those issues. While we are delving into the technological revolution and the digital one, in addition to the precious minerals and precious material and energy and water, What about the internal fronts? There is a silent issue that is taking place in society now. And in the south, in the southern South globe, we believe that at this age of AI and the transformations in technology, we believe deeply that it is time to build your energy and ability to face your foes, and they should also be built on internal cohesion and the ability of societies to be resilient. That is why my intervention will be built on three main fronts. The first one, maybe the conflict between owning power and sovereignty and the fragility of the status quo internally. This fragility shows that AI to be used to redistribute power is being done now, and technology nowadays is as a microscope lens that shows your weaknesses or your strengths. And here I am speaking of the human capital. We can't have technology if we don't have human capital. So this is one. Second, dealing with those technologies in order to produce this technology, but the data and the input I have now show that the future now or the present now is bleak. In Morocco, we have 75% of the youth don't have the basic education or knowledge, and many children in the region struggle because of lack of education. So with this data, with this reality, how can we produce technology at this age of the transformation in the region? So quickly, please. Second, the war of the channels of the flow of technology, which would refer us to two main points. One, the infrastructure, whether to own the servers or to own the microchips, and owning the minerals and owning energy and water. The countries of the region in the south have been looking into the distribution of the world power, but for the infrastructure, whether in terms of owning the servers or the microchips, the data and the input show that we are behind to a large extent. In Morocco, numbers show that maybe we have almost 29 servers for each 10,000, while the average is 52,000 servers. The second point is the flexibility of the training institutions, because the digital and technological revolution, in addition to other revolutions in other fields, require paradigms of learning for life. But the organizations we have now for education are obsolete because they rely on a group of curricula that is not keeping abreast of the contemporary age. I'll give you a chance, but now we have to raise a question since we are talking here about the usage of economic power and international influence. When we say strategic resources in the region, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Oil, of course, right? How does it seem to you, Doctor, that this region is rich with oil? How does it seem to you that these countries use those economic important resources in international influence?
بما أننا نتحدث
What I wanted to comment on, especially when we are talking about the power of digital power, even our understanding of fortune, we need to reshape. Whoever has the data has the power. Today, the biggest consumer of energy is in the world is the data processing. Also, we have to understand that processing data, and that's what our colleague from Morocco has pointed to, it's happening out of our borders, out of our region. We don't have centers to process data in an advanced way in the Arab region, whether in the Gulf countries or the Arab countries. So this is it. That takes us to the limitation of the digital power that we have. If we don't have the infrastructure, if we don't if you don't have the cyber security tools or the ways to control it, if you can't, if you don't own that space, whoever paid attention to Davos conversations, or some of the European leaders maybe said that even .com.org, America can stop these because these domains are controlled by the United States. So digital power has dimensions, but there are limits that we need to know. And if we want to overcome this limitation, we have to invest in these things. Of course, for raw material to export them, and we would think about you are completely wrong. The world today is not the raw material is a production element that that need to be redirected to the added value industries in order to enhance your position in the world. For example, the raw material can be replaced by similar material, can be more expensive, can be more difficult to get, but can be replaced. What is irreplaceable? We go back into the rare minerals that are being used in technology. What the wars are fought in the regions is economic, digital, and so based on that, the raw material, it's not fair for our countries to analyze the component of our exports. We would find a big part would go into raw material that are reintroduced, remanufactured, and then we would go to us. And it's time to end this. And if we want to take space, a place in the redistribution of new powers in this multipolar world. And I would like to talk about what are the measurements of the multipolar world that will take part of our discussion. Dr. Sahar, I would like to ask you a question. Weeks ago, the European Union is reshaping, reforming the big technological firms, or the way it looks into these companies or firms. A while ago in France, for example, there was a force of security raided the X platform office. There was a problem with the algorithm. How is the technological or information chaos has been used? This is a very important point, and we have to mention three main elements: the sender of information and the message itself, how is this conveyed, and the means that is used to convey that messenger. So these three elements that are very important. We talked before about the conveyor of the content and the change, rather than just relying on mainstream media. Of course, now we have activists and digital component creators and content creators, rather. So this is a very important thing when it comes to the Arab and Muslim world, because we have a big percentage of people who in this region actually are young people. These are the content creators. If we look into the message, how do we form these messages? This is we have to say that many users are youth, young men, and they were able to reach them through a content, funny content, for example, drawing the Palestinian flag on makeup tutorial, for example, or learning girls how to use makeup, and that enjoyed big popularity. For example, using the short TikToks in for a few minutes or 1 minute, and using documentation as well in a good way. All these messages are successful. For the third one, when it comes to your question, is talking about the means, and it is not of less important. And I would agree with my colleagues that we face many challenges. If the social media has a sort of two edges, it gives you the opportunity and the platforms that you can through them a message can be conveyed, of course, with the restrictions and the banning that can reduce the influence of the message. We are faced by real technological and industrial and economic and political challenges that are not of less important. Whoever has these capabilities will be able to control the narrative at the end of the day. There is no doubt about that. So when we see, for example, a newspaper like Washington Post laying off all the workers and covering the issues of the Middle East with one signature, all of them, they were suddenly laid off. We are faced by a certain hegemony on the sources of information. Same thing when we have big powers like the European Union, when they talk about controlling the sources of information and technological tools. The biggest question that what should we do in the Arab and Islamic world in order to have not only the narrative and the content creator, and there are many of them, and I feel quite optimistic, but the tools that enable us to have platforms, your own platforms. You as Arab can actually make these platforms and do not export them from the West, because they will not be neutral at all. Technology in general these are not neutral tools, and we are faced by new challenges in a new era, the era of AI, and this is also sort of with two edges. So you have to use it carefully, you have to produce a good content, and you try to introduce yourself to others, and the content can be fake, can be misleading, and if you don't have similar tools, but you rely on the tools of ready-made tools, these tools will not be in your interest. For example, one of the researchers have asked the AI about what is the image or the picture of a terrorist. Produces an image of a person with an Arab features, wearing traditional thobe and head scarf. And where did it get this image from? So in the algorithms and these platforms are not neutral. These are also controlled by people who have the economic and military technological powers. So we must be capable not only in finding activists on the social media like Mu'taz Azaiza or Bisan Auda or activists and journalists. like Al Jazeera reporters, but to have as well the technologies, the modern technologies, and technological knowledge as well, and the economic capability in order to create these platforms and these tools in order to serve us and not to work against us in the future. Before opening for questions, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he comes out with a very important decision through Truth Social even before the White House would announce them. So do you think that the cyberspace have changed the concept of sovereignty and deterrence in your opinion? It is a valid question and a difficult one. And but what we see in every single day, these technologies, these platforms have changed the concept of sovereignty. Not only when Trump he would go to his platform and before probably announcing his decisions rather than announcing them through the Congress, they changed the concept of politics through many channels, through the direct communication as well, and maybe their constituencies, and also through building channels as well that my colleagues as well talked about, and they are about the concept, the misinformation. So this concept of misinformation now, with the development of robotics and agents as well, who are capable of carrying out tasks without human intervention. Even I read that for the first time an agent has employed a person to do a task and it is a joke. That was a joke. But for the robots and agents to be used in different political agendas and foreign agendas as well, through promoting for the misinformation, it is a very serious thing. And when you talked about the policies of the countries, there's another thing that is probably a bit far from the misinformation and away from what our colleagues have mentioned. These platforms and the impact of these platforms to the impact on on the economics of the countries. When we talk about the Palestinian cause, we don't see it away from in separation of the countries who probably pay attention to this cause. The northern MENA region, the MENA region. Yes. So why did I open that point? Because one of the suggestions that we have the central cause, which is the Palestinian one, and also when we talk about, there is an aspect, of course, of trade aspect. Of course, when we have the peace deal or plan for Trump, it is an economic, completely an economic plan. It brings forward an economic solution rather than a political one, in order to limit the solution into economic one. We as Arabs, Muslims as well, with this and our control over the platforms, we cannot have a strong economy, an economy that can survive and provide for the people, and which can protect our countries and our cause from the exterior agendas. Thank you so much. So I'll open the space for questions, just a direct question, please, and to whom it is directed.
الميكروفون لو سمحت. تفضلي.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Make it peace be Dr. Mervet Ibrahim, Executive Manager for Redistribution, Technological Advisor. Thank you so much for managing this session, and would like to thank Jazeera Forum for tackling this issue. And my question is for Dr. Sahar. I would like to thank you, and we are very happy for this analysis and the future vision. I wanted to ask you that I can see within the artificial intelligence, what are the new tools that can help us to leave the hegemony, especially all the platforms are controlled by other countries. Another question?
سعيد.
Hassan Abu Arafat, journalist, actually reports say that the digital economy can jump into $22 billion, and it can dominate 22% of the GDP. This suggests a very important question: who will be leading the digital world in the coming decades? A second question: will be there a digital superpower rather than the military superpower? My last question: what are the moral dangers? To whom you address your question?
طيب شكرا. كمان ناخذ سؤال.
Okay, we'll take another question.
تفضل.
My question is in English.
Yes.
I'm Ashraf Siddiqui. When we talk about the digital revolution, and revolutions are always led by someone, so who is behind that force or forces who are working behind this redistribution of global power? There must be some secret force.
Thank you. طيب نجاوب على هذه الأسئلة. دكتورة سحر لو سمحتي تفضلي.
To answer these questions, Dr. Sahar. So, Dr. Mervet, thank you so much for this question about the future and what can we do as Arabs and Muslims. Actually, we are not poor of these fortunes. There is the financial fortunes and human fortunes in the MENA region, and of course, there are many technologies that are available now in many Arab countries and Muslim countries as well. If we look into Malaysia, Turkey, Indonesia, these countries have the threshold for new technological advancement. What we lack is the coordination and management. How can we create some real partnership and organization between all the sources of power in the Arab world and the Islamic world in general? How can we benefit from the financial fortunes and the human also sources in the MENA region and the rising powers, and to create a new system for the Arab and Muslim world that enables us to create new tools, as hasn't been done by the upscrolled Palestinian activist who started to get and enjoy many followers just because it offers a different narrative, different from the ones that are controlling the media and controlled by probably the Western companies, or who they have their own agendas. The final question is who's behind these platforms that are not neutral, and who has the money, who has the technology? So who's leading that digital revolution? Where did it start? It started at the West, so whoever is leading it is the West. We are talking about a multipolar world, so maybe we are on the road, on the way of that world. But until now, until this moment, the biggest polar is the United States, and of course there is a new giant represented by China. Even if we look into that, there is centralization as well still for powers, whether it was economic or military or political. So we are on the way for a multipolar world, but we haven't reached that stage until now. So this dominance means that whoever has the money and technology and the political dominance will also enjoy the biggest control on the technology and the digital platforms. If we want to change this reality with all these challenges, we have to make these successful partnerships. This is, in my opinion, the way for survival. So who?
Revolution.
Magnificent Seven.
Seven.
Magnificent.
The Magnificent Seven. There are 7 companies that market value is more than 5% of the standard Alphabet. We have Google, Microsoft, Tesla, Meta, and I can. These are the companies that are leading the transformation. Whoever owns these companies, they are all based in the United States, and they are all in the United States. These companies, when you see any rising company, including the new websites, any emerging company, they normally acquire them easily, and I am talking here about trillions of dollars of value. Each one of these companies is of a value more than 1 trillion. So whoever is talking that, they would notice that each of those 7 companies, they are the leading role, not only in technology, but the digital transformation. They control, dominate these companies and determine the trends of the markets. And based on that, the markets in the world, NVIDIA and other companies, they manufacture the microchips. So today there is a complete full circle of these companies. So there is no sovereign fund that has no stocks in in these companies. And I challenge any investor. I challenge that the ownership is distributed around the world. So we are talking about emerging, and I don't want a website that attracts 1 million, 2 million people, but to have a chamber for the dialogue that I like. And my real this is what Gaza was successful in achieving at the first stage. Do you think the algorithms can limit that success? The challenge is to go back to play that role in these platforms. And if I'm capable of coming up with the new platforms, maybe I can change the narratives, but the road is too long. Dr. Al-Tayyib, when answering the question, and maybe that Dr. Ibrahim talked about who will lead the digital world in the coming period of time. Thank you for the question. When it comes to the issue and to link it to the other issues. There must be multiple leaders based on the location, and what is important that we talked about during these sessions. The most important thing is for example, the microchips and rare minerals also provide availability of infrastructure, and also the capability of to move from to have a real shift through scientific research. When we talk about scientific research, we talk about investing in human capital. So whoever is leading this digital revolution for the coming 10 years, these are countries that are capable of positioning itself strategically, and they are part and parcel of a complete chain. I would like to thank you, Dr. Tayyib Al-Ghazi, and I would like to thank Sahar Khamis and Dr. Ibrahim Saif. Thank you so much, and thank you for attending this session, and of course more sessions are on the way. Thank you so much.